Israel's current war against the Hamas terror organization, which started on October 7, 2023, 17 months ago, has brought yet another wave, possibly the largest, strongest wave of anti-Israel rhetoric around the world, with all kinds of anti-Israel accusations like apartheid, genocide, and occupation. I think it's very important to understand the history of Israel in Gaza to really get a clear sense of what exactly is happening, has happened, and what really is the truth of this story. Shalom, my friends. This is Akiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. It's so important for people to understand the facts, not just read a 5-second piece or watch a 3-second video on TikTok and think that they understand the entire situation. There's so much complexity and so much history to this conflict, but there's certain things that people simply don't understand because they haven't taken the time to try to understand, to try to learn. I want to share a few key points of very important facts that will help people, hopefully, to understand that what is happening here is not occupation, it's not apartheid, and it's for sure not genocide. Let's take a look at Israel's relationship with the Gaza Strip since 1948. We'll do a brief run through it. We're not going to hit every single point, but I think it will be helpful for people to have a solid and strong understanding, a context at least, for the current war that Israel is in. So first of all, 1948, Israel is founded, the creation of the Jewish state. And that comes as a result of the UN partition plan and also the War of Independence, which was launched against Israel by its enemies the day after the UN partition plan was passed in 1947. And then the next phase, a larger phase of this war, was launched the day after, moments after Israel declared its independence in May of 1948. At the end of the war, there was a green line drawn. That's an armistice line, not a final border, but a permanent ceasefire, which didn't remain permanent. But at least a line was drawn between Israel and its neighbors. That line was called the Green Line. When it comes to Gaza, that line was drawn between Israel and as the Gaza Strip looks today, also around Judea and Samaria, or as some people call the West Bank. Now, those two pieces of land were supposed to become the Arab state next to Israel. But it never happened. Why? Because Egypt illegally took over Gaza and Jordan illegally took over Judea and Samaria. Let's focus on Gaza. Egypt controlled Gaza from 1948 to 1967, 1949 to 1967, with a brutal rule, not giving the Arabs there, the Palestinians, rights, citizenship, access to jobs, and other things. It was a very difficult period, to say the least, for the Gazans living in Gaza under Arab rule, right, under Egyptian Arab rule. Nobody seems to remember that part of their history because it wasn't Israel doing that to them. Israel did take over the Gaza Strip in 1967 when Egypt, Jordan, and Syria launched a war of extermination against Israel. And as we know, Israel won that war miraculously in 6 days, defeating Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. And as a result, Israel took over control of the Gaza Strip, making the lives of the Gazans living there way better in a short period of time than they ever were under Egyptian rule. People forget about that as well. Time went on, and life was getting better for the Gazans. They were allowed to come into Israel to work. They were getting better access to education and healthcare, and other services as well. And then in 1987, the younger generation there who never understood or never experienced the brutal regime of the Egyptians just wanted to get the Israelis out and then launched the first intifada. That lasted for many years, from 1987 to 1993, with lots of violence and terror attacks against Israelis along the Gaza border, within Gaza, and around Israel. That eventually comes to an end in 1993. All kinds of peace negotiations are attempted at. They fail. In 2000, another intifada starts. This time, in 2000. This time, basically, mostly being carried out by suicide bombers around the country. Now, pretty much all of those suicide bombers come from Judea and Samaria because there was already a fence built around the Gaza Strip. So what did the terrorists in Gaza Strip do? They started to launch rockets. That was the beginning of launching of rockets against Israel onto Israeli soil from the Gaza Strip. That was 4 or 5 years of horror. Over 1,000 Israelis were killed in terror attacks, most of them suicide bombing attacks. And then 2004 it came to an end. And the government that was in place at the time said we are going to disengage from Gaza. We're going to leave Gaza, all of our military and all of our civilians as well, in the couple of dozen communities that existed there. It was led by Ariel Sharon, the prime minister at the time. And he said that this disengagement is necessary for peace in the region, that if there ever is a future peace deal, Israel will completely leave Gaza anyway. So we should leave now to create the terms for peace. Now, this was a unilateral peace agreement. This was not a peace deal. On the side of the Gazans, the Palestinians, they did not have to do anything and they didn't obligate themselves to do anything. It was a year-long process leading up to the actual disengagement in the summer of 2005. It was a huge, huge split in Israeli society. They created a huge split. Those who were against the disengagement, those who were for it. It was a very, very, very tough year for Israel. And in the end, the Israeli government went through with it in the summer of 2005, disengaging completely from Gaza, all military presence taken out of Gaza, and all civilian presence as well. Communities were dismantled, civilians were taken out, sometimes by force in certain areas, in certain cases, and Israel left the Gaza Strip completely. Now, the government thought this is going to create the terms for peace. This is going to create the situation for peaceful relations between us and Gaza. That was unfortunately the furthest thing from the truth. Rocket attacks not only continued, but actually increased. And Israel realized really soon that this disengagement was not going to bring peace, and it was only going to bring more and more war. Since the disengagement from Gaza in 2005, when Israel left completely, there have been multiple wars leading up to the current war that we're in right now, as a result of Hamas constantly sending rockets, shooting rockets at Israelis and carrying out cross-border terror attacks. The war that we're in now is only the latest of a string of wars that Israel has been forced to fight against against Hamas in the Gaza Strip as a result of its relentless fight against the Jewish state. Important to also include that after Israel left in 2005, Hamas was voted into power in 2006 and took over the Gaza Strip in 2007 after a civil war there with a rival political and military power. They have been in power ever since, and that is why this war, right, which was started October 7th, but the worst cross-border attack ever carried out against Israel, this current war, according to the military and political leadership, can only end with a complete dismantling of Hamas, taking them completely out of power. Israel can no longer afford to have them on our border and have them in power in the Gaza Strip after all of these years, after 18 years since 2007 of them being in power. That is the picture, a general quick, brief picture, but these are facts that people need to understand. That Israel left in 2005, said, here, we're leaving. We're giving you the land, basically. Do something good with it. Create peace with it. Create a society. Create a better future for yourselves. And the exact opposite happened. Any humanitarian aid that went into Gaza since then has been used for war and for terror. Instead of going to the people themselves and creating a better life for them, has gone literally into building tunnels and importing weapons and creating weapons of destruction. That is the situation. That is what Israel has been fighting for all of these years. And that is why Israel can no longer afford to have Hamas on its border. And that is why Israel is fighting this war for so long and will not give up this fight until Hamas is completely out of power. We hope that day comes very, very soon. All the best, my friends, and be well.